Get ready to get haunted. Today we're going to talk about writing ghost stories that'll terrify your audience. By the way, my name is Brandon McNulty. I'm the author of Bad Parts, also the author of Entry Wounds, and welcome to my writing channel. This past weekend I was at a conference and I had a discussion with some other writers about ghost stories. And I thought that since the topic was fresh in my mind, I should do a video on it. So today we're going to talk about what a ghost story is, what key ingredients need to be included, and I'm also going to give you 4 tips for making these stories terrifying. But let's start off by answering the question, what is a ghost story? And very simply, it's a story that explores how characters react to ghosts. And a ghost is, of course, a lingering spirit that interferes with reality. And usually a ghost will be tethered to a location, an object, or a person. Now, when you're telling a story, a ghost can be either real or imagined. In some cases, you'll have supernatural stories where characters are being haunted by literal ghosts that do exist within the reality of the story. But on the other hand, you might have stories where the existence of ghosts is ambiguous or it's even disproven. And oftentimes these stories focus on characters who are suffering because they believe in ghosts, and they have to confront that belief. Either way, the important thing is how characters react. Do they run from their fears? Do they face their fears? Do they overcome them? Alright, now that we've got that established, let's talk about the key ingredients of a ghost story. And obviously, right up front, you need a ghost. We already talked about how they can be real or imagined, but another thing to consider is that they don't have to be those floaty, see-through creatures that we often think of as ghosts. They can take solid physical form, they can interact with their environment, they can even be harmed by physical objects. It's entirely up to you. And the term ghost is flexible. It might include other supernatural beings like demons, monsters, or any other creatures that linger after death. Another ingredient to keep in mind is the haunting, and this is when the ghost torments mortal characters and forces them to react. Ghosts might make random noises inside a house, or they might chase characters from place to place, or they might even harm or murder someone. Then the third ingredient is the victim, and this is the person being haunted. Sometimes the victim is punished due to unlucky circumstances, like they just happened to buy a haunted house or a haunted object without knowing better. Other times the victim or their family has committed a sin of some sort, and now the ghost is punishing the victim for that behavior. And then one last ingredient I want to throw out there is the idea of the past haunting the present. A common theme for most ghost stories is that something terrible happened in the past and now it needs to be resolved in the present. And there are several different ways this might play out. For instance, you might have a situation where a ghost is vengeful. The ghost is trying to resolve injustice. Maybe the ghost was murdered or abused and now it's seeking revenge against the abuser. Other times you might have a situation where evil is repeating itself. Some horrible act was committed in the past and now the spirits are working to ensure that that act is repeated again and again in the present and future. Another way things might play out is with a ghost seeking atonement. Maybe the ghost committed horrible acts in the past and now it must atone by punishing mortals who commit those same acts. And then finally, a ghost might be haunting the present for hopeful reasons. Maybe the ghost failed to complete a mission or find peace in their mortal life, and now they're haunting people in hopes of completing that mission or bringing peace to the world. There's a lot of different possibilities here, but usually you're going to have a situation where the past is haunting the present. Alright, now I'm going to give you 4 tips for making terrifying ghost stories. And I'm going to take some examples from the movie The Shining and also from the movie It Follows. So consider this your spoiler warning. But the first tip is to make your ghost unique. There are tons of existing stories out there about spirits that rattle doors and dim light bulbs inside haunted houses. That's familiar stuff, and what's familiar usually isn't scary. So if you're writing a ghost story, try to find new creative ways to unsettle your audience. For example, in the movie It Follows, the ghost acts like a sort of haunted STD that gets passed from person to person. When the main character has sex with her boyfriend, the haunting gets passed on to her, and the ghost follows her relentlessly. If it catches her, it'll kill her, and the only way to escape the ghost is by running away or passing it on to another person. Second tip is to build atmosphere from the start. And if you plan on scaring your audience, you'll want to create a persisting sense of unease, tension, and mystery. And you can do this in a bunch of different ways. One effective way is by creating a sense of isolation. Move your characters out to a remote location or put them in any position where they can't rely on help. And The Shining is a great example of this. It opens up with chilling music and shots of winding, empty roads leading to the Overlook Hotel. Eventually, Jack Torrance and his family move into this hotel for an extended stay, and they get snowed in for the winter, and it's just them and the ghosts inhabiting the place. Another way to build atmosphere is to create an environment where the characters are always in danger. And that's what made It Follows so terrifying. Not only does the ghost constantly chase its target, but it also changes its appearance. One minute the ghost is an old woman, then the next minute it's a 7-foot tall man. It can be the person in front of you, the person behind you. The anxiety and uncertainty never ends. And that contributes strongly to the story's atmosphere. Tip number 3 is to gradually introduce your ghost's powers, abilities, and methods. And while you're building your story's atmosphere, you'll also want to build your ghost's reputation as a force of terror and destruction. And make sure you do it slowly. Give us a reason to be afraid at the start, then gradually clue us in on what else the creature is capable of. For example, It Follows opens with a woman running away from an invisible threat. People offer to help her, but she pretends that everything is fine. Eventually, she flees her neighborhood and spends the night at the beach, where she is brutally murdered by the ghost. And we see right up front that the ghost is capable of murder, but it's not until later in the story that we learn how it chooses its victims and that it can also camouflage itself. Then in The Shining, you have a situation where there's a gradual build. The ghosts slowly introduce themselves to Jack and his son Danny until things get really unsettling toward the end. And the fourth tip is to embrace the unknown. And the unknown is full of horrible possibilities, and that's what makes it so unsettling. And for that reason, you may want to avoid answering every question surrounding your creature's desires, motivations, and origin. In It Follows, the origin of the ghost is never explained. It may have been chasing people for years or decades or millennia, but we never learn the full story behind the curse, and that makes it all the more unnerving. Another way to use the unknown to your advantage is to give your story an ambiguous ending. These work really well in horror, and a lingering question can haunt your audience forever. For instance, at the end of The Shining, we see a black and white photo of Jack Torrance, and in the photo, he's smiling during a party at the Overlook Hotel. And the photo is dated 1921, which is decades before the events of the movie. And this final image raises several questions, like, why is Jack in that photo? Was he really there back in 1921? Is there some kind of reincarnation thing going on? Or was his soul trapped inside the photo after the events of the story? Whatever the reason, the lack of closure helps the story end on a chilling note, and it ends up sticking with the audience. So I hope this helps. Question of the day: what is your favorite ghost story? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to support the channel, please pick up a copy of either one of my books and be sure to leave reviews on Amazon. Bad Parts is great if you like small town horror. It's about people trading away their sick and injured body parts in order to get healthy again. And then Entry Wounds is great if you like thrillers. It's about a guy who picks up a haunted gun and he cannot put it down until he kills 6 people with it. Also, be sure to check out my other videos. Like, share, and subscribe. And as always, remember to keep on writing.